Okay, so when you think of a tropical rainforest, what's the first word that comes to mind? I'm gonna guess it's rain, right? It seems kind of obvious, but the real answer is way more amazing than you'd think. It turns out these incredible places don't just happen to be in a wet climate, they actually create it. And the secret to how they pull it off is what we're diving into today.
First things first, let's get some perspective on this. You'd think rainforests cover this huge chunk of the planet, but they don't. They only cover about 6% of the Earth's land. Just 6%. When you think about how famous they are, that tiny number is your first clue that something really special is going on here.
But now, get this. Packed inside that tiny 6% is more than half of all the plant and animal species in the entire world. I mean, that is just a mind-boggling amount of life crammed into one place. So, what's the secret? What is it that creates these perfect conditions for life to just explode?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to start with the absolute basics. And it all begins with geography and two very simple ingredients: heat and water. So you find rainforests huddled in this band right around the equator. And because of that spot on the globe, they get blasted with direct, intense sunlight all year long. What that means is there are no real seasons, no winter or summer, just a super consistent daily temperature that kind of hangs out between 20 and 28 degrees Celsius. It's predictably hot every single day.
And that, of course, brings us to the wet part. And to really get your head around just how much rain we're talking about, let's compare it to something. The UK, for example, gets around 1,200 millimeters of rain in a year. A typical rainforest, it can get up to 4,000. That is more than 3 times as much. It's a daily downpour.
So how on earth does a rainforest produce that much rain, day in and day out? Well, it all comes down to this simple but incredibly powerful daily cycle that works pretty much like a machine.
The whole process is called convectional rainfall, and it's so regular you could almost set your watch to it. Every morning, that intense equatorial sun beats down and heats up the wet ground. This causes tons of water to evaporate, creating this warm, soggy air that starts to rise. As it gets higher up, it cools down, and all that water vapor squishes together into these huge, dark storm clouds. And then, usually in the afternoon, boom, the clouds just let it all go in a massive, heavy downpour. Sun, evaporation, rain, and then you do it all over again the next day.
But hang on a second. This is where the story takes a really interesting turn. Is that simple cycle, water evaporating from the ground, is that really enough to explain 4,000 millimeters of rain? Where's all of that water vapor truly coming from?
And this question leads us to the rainforest's greatest secret. You see, the forest isn't just a passive victim of the weather, it's the one making the weather. And the secret ingredient? Well, it's the trees themselves.
It's all because of this process called transpiration. The easiest way to think about it is like trees are breathing. They suck up all this water through their roots, and then they release it as water vapor straight from their leaves right into the air. And we're not talking about a little bit of mist here. We're talking about a colossal amount of water. The scale of this is just staggering. The Amazon rainforest pumps so much water into the atmosphere that scientists have actually called it a flying river. A river in the sky that carries more water than the actual Amazon River on the ground. Let that sink in for a second. The forest isn't just living in the rain, it is making the rain.
But this incredible self-watering engine does a lot more than just create its own weather. Its impact is felt across the entire planet, which is how it earned its very famous nickname.
A massive 20%, a full fifth of all the oxygen on Earth is produced right here in the Amazon rainforest. That means 1 out of every 5 breaths you take is thanks to this one single ecosystem. It's just incredible.
And that's exactly why we call it the lungs of the planet. It's a perfect nickname, right? Just like our lungs, it breathes in, sucking up enormous amounts of carbon dioxide from the air. And then it breathes out, releasing the fresh oxygen that all life on Earth depends on.
But there is one last final twist in this story, a paradox that honestly seems to defy all logic. With all that life and all that rain, you'd assume the very foundation of the forest, the soil, would be unbelievably rich and fertile. But it's not. And here it is. This is the paradox. On the one hand, you've got this constant, heavy rain that fuels explosive growth everywhere you look. But on the other hand, the actual soil itself is surprisingly nutrient poor. So how can so much life grow from such bad soil?
Well, the answer, believe it or not, lies with the rain. Again, Those heavy downpours are so intense, they literally wash any nutrients right out of the topsoil. So the forest evolved this absolutely brilliant solution. The nutrients aren't stored in the soil where they can get washed away. No, they're locked up safe inside the living plants and trees themselves. It's an amazing survival strategy, a totally closed loop where the ecosystem just holds on tight to its resources and recycles them constantly.
So what does this all really tell us? It tells us that a rainforest isn't just some random collection of trees that happens to be in a wet place. It's a perfectly balanced, self-sustaining system. It makes its own weather, it helps power the entire planet, and it holds the secret to its own survival, not in the ground beneath it, but within life itself.